And there are people who are really awesome athletes that fail this. Those are probably the athletes that are going to die young. Someone's seeing a therapist for anxiety and all they're doing is talking about things. Well, have you done anything? There could be a physiological thing going on here. If we want to know how good your breathing is, if we want to get an idea of where your health is at, I don't need to put you on a treadmill. I don't need to put you through a CrossFit workout. If you fail the test, it's a sign of chronic hyperventilation. Anything under 15 seconds, you need help.
So I don't know if it was on Threads or maybe one of the articles you wrote recently, Mike, but you were talking about instead of regurgitating information, reflecting, gaining your own insights, and sharing that instead. And I wanted you to talk more about it because that hit me like a ton of bricks because it's something a mentor of mine has told me, and I think a lot of folks need to hear it. So I wanted to give it another platform if they haven't seen it or read it, of the importance of not simply regurgitating information that you read from a book or you heard from another influencer, but like actually gaining your own insights in life and sharing that wisdom. So expand on that if you remember the post I'm talking about.
I do. It was on Instagram Threads, and Instagram Threads is my favorite place to just post things that pop in my head. So while I'm working out, something pops in my head. I just it's like a self note taker in a way of like, oh yeah, remember this. But also I'd spend a moment and go, okay, how can I word this in which it'll land for others too? But that one was really inspired by being on social media and just watching the parrots, people just parroting each other and parroting whatever was happening. And I, you know, we started our school community. And the funny thing is I'm on school, and because we're running a community there, I'm on it hours a day. And I'm in a few other communities as well. And I look around in there, and I might leave that and go into Instagram, and Instagram immediately feels really gross. There's this like, all it is there's a lot of entertainment there. I can sit there and scroll through and be entertained. But anytime anyone brings up a serious thing, it feels regurgitated. And all these short sound bites are so regurgitated all the time. And when that Charlie Kirk murder assassination occurred, I saw a lot of parroting going on there too. It was as if it's like Rachel Maddow had gotten into the keyboards of anyone who is left leaning, and Tucker Carlson had gotten into anyone keyboard who is right leaning. And all I saw was Rachel Maddow and Tucker Carlson having it out on Facebook. And I realized that there were very few people, and people were responding to it immediately. And I didn't post anything about it for days. I sat and wrote an article about it because I wanted to sit with it. Contemplation requires time to digest it, to decompose it and recompose it. Takes time. Witnessing something in the moment and having an immediate reaction and starting to assign blame is very reactionary. It's a poor way to live. Anyone who lives that way is suffering. And I choose life, because a good life, I'm going to reduce my suffering. And so that post was a reminder to me, but also a reminder to other people. We don't have to regurgitate. And, that we were trained to regurgitate. So it's not like some people are, don't do it at all or whatever. But when you went to school, you learned the information, you had to regurgitate it to get a good grade, and you got rewarded for it. Your entire system is set up to regurgitate. And so to overcome that, it's an uncomfortable process. And if you're listening to this and you go, oh, I haven't had that uncomfortable process of going into contemplation and questioning my own reactive responses, then that's an invitation.
Yeah, no, and that's why it resonated so well with me, because I read a lot of books, and I've learned a lot of those cliches, and I could quote things for days, which will make me sound eloquent, smart, and educated. But one of my mentors told me, he said, start documenting your life and pull your insights from your experiences. And this is why I know we've spoken about journaling, and you do cursive to help with that. I still haven't gotten to that level yet, but when I write things I go through, or I actually reflect on, this worked out well in my life. Like I used the example with like work getting out of control. Me, so perfect example was extreme ownership. Everybody talks about lead up the chain of command. What the hell does that mean? Right? But I could say, oh, there was a decision at work that completely changed my workload. I went to my boss. I went with the same perspective. And instead of saying, oh, you did this to me, I said, hey, you made a decision. I wanted to inform you on how that decision has impacted my workload and what I see happening down the line. We had a conversation. I spoke to the rest of the team. We ended up alleviating that by he came back, he went to corporate. So he went up 2 rungs above him, which is 4 or 5 rungs above me, to get approval for a budget to give us a freelancer to ease up my hours. So now when I say lead up the chain of command, I have a story behind that and an example and an insight to show how that worked. And the outcome was my boss coming up to me at the end of it and shaking my hand and saying, hey, thank you for bringing that to my attention. And that's where I've gotten so much passion towards that of, okay, we already know stories resonate, right? And not just the stories, but also the stories that provide the insights help. So I appreciate you for sharing that, because if it was just as much for you, it was just as much for me. And I felt as though the audience would benefit from some of those insights as well. So thank you, brother, for sharing that.
You're welcome. One of the things we're going to get into today is I know you picked out some research and I took a peek, and we're going to talk about wisdom. Even
Yep.
though there's scientific research about physiology and this and that, we're actually going to get into the wisdom piece, which, the difference between knowledge and wisdom could be argued that wisdom is knowledge applied and witness the results.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people do confuse, they desire wisdom and they just keep on soaking up more information.
Mm-hmm.
That itch will not get scratched until you apply it.
Oh man. That right there. So do we want to hop into the studies? Do we want to start unraveling a couple of these? And
Yeah, let's dive in.
so let's start with the first study, the vagus nerve and peak performance. This is the paper was the vagus nerve, a cornerstone for mental health and performance optimization in recreational and elite sports. So this study, pretty much what they did was researchers explored how stimulation of the vagus nerve, the main highway, pretty much for your parasympathetic nervous system, affects stress recovery, emotional regulation, and performance consistency in both elite athletes and recreational participants. They used heart rate variability, HRV monitoring, as well as other situations or other measurements and cognitive tasks under stress to observe real-time nervous system shifts. So how they responded in real time to the stress. And they found some things out. They found higher vagal tone equals faster stress recovery and enhanced focus under pressure, things we've spoken about. The vagus acts as a neural clutch between mental load and physical output. So there is a connection between the two. And then consistent parasympathetic dominance equals greater cognitive precision and emotional stability. So, Mike, what does all that mean?
Well, for parasympathetic dominance, let's just unpack that one. It's a big word for being calm.
Yeah. Chilled out.
Yeah. So if you're pounding 4 cups of coffee and your hands shaking, you're not in a parasympathetic state. You're in a sympathetic state, which is not great for executive function, and that we could say decision making. Although it encompasses executive function, encompasses more than that. But for simplicity's sake, there's that. One is we're looking at athletes, and uh, two reasons that a lot of studies are done on athletes. One is they're already high performers, and it's easy to measure what's going on there.
Yeah.
So I think that anyone that looks at, well, I'm not an elite athlete, or I'm not a college athlete, or whatever athletes, look, this applies to everybody. These are finely tuned people, so we're able to measure things more easily. Also, most research is being conducted at a college, and where you're going to find high performing performers, you're going to find them. You're going to go pull out the athlete pool.
Mm-hmm.
I used to do that in school all the time. I was in studies. I was a lab rat, and I was out there helping recruit people in. But yeah, the vagus nerve is really, really fascinating thing that came up my awareness about a decade ago, and their polyvagal theory was something that gained some popularity amongst the people in the breathwork scene. But the thing is, the thing that really blew my mind about the vagus nerve is it connects the brain to the heart to the gut, right?
Hmm.
And so, and there is information going both ways. It's not just information from the brain going down to the heart and to the gut. There's also information going from the gut and the brain and the heart up to the brain. And so uh, we can think about, the gut is where a lot of your emotional load is at. So you have an emotional response, it sends information up the vagus nerve to the brain and alerts the brain, hey, I'm having some type of emotion. We need to do something about it. And so psychologically, you can be impacted by what's happening. And then vice versa, you can reframe psychologically something going on, and it's going to send the signal to the heart and the gut to calm the F down. And so it's a really cool thing to be studying. And like you said, it's emotional health, cognitive flexibility, your ability to be resilient against stress, lower inflammation if your vagus nerve has more tone. And when people have low tone, if they don't have, um, if their HRV is poor, which is a great measure of what's going on with the vagus nerve, people have anxiety and depression, chronic inflammation, cardiovascular disease, and autism and ADHD are also associated uh, with poor vagal tone. And
Mm.
so, what's really fascinating is my wife. She's a psychotherapist by trade, and when we first met, and she was, we would talk about. She wasn't telling me about her patients by name, but I would hear about these things, and I go, "Yeah, that sounds like a really easy physical fix." Someone seeing a therapist for anxiety, and all they're doing is talking about things. I go, well,
Ruminating.
have you done anything? There could be a physiological thing going on here. So, um, the there's just so many different ways to train the vagal tone, and you can basically measure how your vagal tone is improving by what's happening with HRV. It's probably the thing that the average person can measure that is going to tell them if they're improving their vagal tone or not. Now, there is a point of diminishing returns. Some people have elevated HRVs for long periods of time. There's that can also be dysfunctional. So there is a sweet spot.
Mm. Mm. I love that because that's pretty much what I took away from it was the importance of regulating your nervous system. And speaking of high performers, yes, they tested athletes, but business owners, folks who have to make critical decisions, those are all high performance things. And within here, it talks about the precision of decision making. Like you make better decisions when you're chill and calm. And we already know for anyone who is in a committed relationship, the moment you get you get triggered and you're having a conversation with your spouse. How effective is that conversation when you both are not calm? It's not
Yeah.
effective at all.
Well, I've mentioned this on previous shows too, which is a concept called window of tolerance. And your window
Mhm.
of tolerance is like how much new information and stress and decisions can you make in this moment? And if you're tired and worn out, your window of tolerance is really small. If you're well rested and in great shape, your window of tolerance is going to be a lot bigger. And so your window of tolerance is going to dictate how well you can be in flow states. If my window of tolerance is really big, then I can access flow states very easily. And that's where I can make decisions very quickly and efficiently. I'm actually burning less calories, less glucose or ketones by the brain when I'm in a flow state. And
Mm.
so uh, if I'm inside that window of tolerance and I can handle a lot in that moment, it actually feels pretty easy. And so this stacks. So if day after day I am improving my vagal tone, which I do things every morning. I'm doing things throughout the day every day that improves my vagal tone. I'm doing these things, and my ability to learn quickly, improve my memory, make decisions, train effectively, recover, sleep well. These are all things where I'm find myself in flow states more frequently, and the more frequently you're in flow states, the easier it is to get into flow states, and it begins to compound, and
Yeah.
that's where you can become a high performer at anything that you're doing. And for most people, I look around at the average person, and you can just look at them. They're breathing short, they're overweight, and they're constantly stressed, constantly looking at their phone. These people have low vagal tone. Their window of tolerance is so small. I don't know if these people experience flow states very often, maybe outside of playing some video games, um, which
Mm-hmm.
is which is one way you can achieve them. But there's some things that I think we all know that video games probably isn't the best way to develop your
Yeah,
consciousness.
no, I would agree. As a as a former gamer myself, I built computers in high school because I was gaming, and I was like, I need a better computer. And I'm actually still part of the clan I was part of in high school, and we used to do a thing called F up Fridays, where we would just drink and play games. Battlefield 1942, Battlefield 2, all of that. I still like to boot up a game every now and again just to get back into my childhood feel. But I don't have as much time for it now. But to your point, and I want to give you your flowers because just doing this podcast together, I've picked up on a few things. You've given some suggestions, and I've taken them to heart and I've applied them. One of which was uh, the breath work, paying attention to my breath. I'm in the car, making my in and out smooth. I practice some of the Wim Hof method, trying to get very consistent in that every day. I'll get like a streak of 3 or 4 days, and then one day I'll miss. But between doing that and bringing fun to what I'm doing, running. I went for a run on Sunday with my baby girl, and there's Halloween decorations out. When we're recording this, this is near Halloween, and I saw a dude outside. I was like, "Hey, man!" Like all concerned. He's like, "What?" I was like, "Dude, there's spiders on your house." And he's like, "Ah." And like before I knew it, I ran 4 miles. Yesterday, I did the same thing. Right? I'm running. I cracked jokes with some random people I'm running by. Crushed my PR by 2 minutes for a 5K. So I went from running 28 minutes, 3.2 miles, to running 26 minutes, or 3.2 miles in 26 minutes. Resting heart rate the other day was down to 60. Remember when we started, I was closer to 70. That was the lowest I've seen in a while, and my HRV is getting up.
That's greater than 15% difference.
Yeah, man, and it's not consistent. It still goes up and down, but
Yeah.
I'm having deeper valleys than ever before, lower peaks than before, and the average is coming down. And I still have to work on some things, optimize my sleep. That's a huge weak point for me. But to your point of the vagus nerve, I'm seeing the impacts come into fruition from some of those practices, because I was going to ask you what you do to tone your vagus nerve, and I think that'll be a perfect toss up for the second study that we had teed up.
So vagus nerve, one is breath, right? And we're going to get deeper into that. But the other one is HRV biofeedback. And so there's, I went to Cal State just to visit maybe 10 years ago, 10, 12 years ago. And they had the Heart Math. You ever heard of Heart Math Institute?
No.
So Heart Math Institute is their whole thing is how do we create greater heart coherence? And basically that means that the brain and the heart are synced up. So one of the concepts in becoming a more of a sovereign individual, being somebody who is in charge of their life and isn't being rattled by the things going on around them, is that their heart and their mind are synced up. And so they're actually able to measure that. Now you can get the Heart Math app on your phone now. So yeah. So I haven't used it, but I remember using the old school computer program, and I was sitting there and they hooked up all these electrodes to me, and it was like a video game. I was watching the screen and I was aiming to bring my coherence in, and so I could change my breath and my focus, and I was learning how to dial in to this zone. And so you can play around with that on your phone now. Another thing that boosts vagal tone is going to be aerobic exercise. That's also something else we've talked about, is certain types of training protocols. You know, the MAP training where you're 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, or a minute on, minute off. Training that aerobic capacity, your aerobic capacity goes up, your vagal tone will also improve. Mindfulness and meditation. These things are going to improve the vagal tone. Cold exposure. So cold plunges, even just doing the cold face. I know it seems kind of silly. You've seen people on Instagram fill up a bowl of ice water and put their face in it. And you're like, come on, does that really do anything?
Yeah.
It does. It does.
Ashton Hall, I don't know if you've seen this guy. He blew up. Jacked black dude he was popular for the routine. And you've probably seen all the copies of the clips where they show like wake up and then like they put their face in the bowl of ice. He made that famous.
I see. Okay, so yeah, that actually works. Social connections. So hanging out with your friends, having a good time. And then lastly is being able to shift your internal narrative about situations and stories you have about what's happening in the moment. And so having high vagal tone allows you to have psychological flexibility, but also psychological flexibility allows you to have better vagal tone. So it's these things all feed each other. I think a lot of times the way that we were raised and the way that the media likes to present things and the way that a lot of science works is isolate, and then it's like, oh, you're experiencing this symptom, this is the thing that answers it, and it feels like only a one-way road. But the reality is this is like everything is moving together, and this improves this and the other, and if you improve this, then it turns into a positive cycle, or it could go into a negative cycle. And so the one thing that I encourage people to do that are listening to this is really be conscious of how much cause symptom mentality you may have around, because people ask me, is taking creatine a good idea? And then I come back with, for what? What are you trying to improve? And they go, oh, and all they heard was it's good for them. And so there's this oversimplified thinking, and where people are missing all the nuance. And going back to earlier in the conversation, everything on social media, people just parroting things, is people are lacking the nuance. Let's look at this study and like really break it down, and what does it mean, and how do we do all these things? We're talking about it right now. Hopefully I'm able to introduce some nuance to the audience. And nuance, in order to get to nuance, you have to be able to think critically. And that means that you have to be able to have a really good BS meter, because people are spreading BS left and right. They're totally unaware of it. They're not doing it on purpose. But you got to really learn to think for yourself. And I, a big part of what I try to do with everyone I work with, clients and everything, is I try to teach them how to think, not think like me. They can borrow some of my frameworks, but at the end of the day, I feel like I did my job well if they're thinking for themselves and then start questioning me. I go, okay, now we're in a real dialogue. This is really, really good. And so that's something I see missing in the world. So I think that the topic of the vagus nerve is really a great one to get into this, is because it's not just a psychological thing. It's what's happening physically in the body. It's a chemical thing. It's a mechanics thing. How's your breathing mechanics? These are all things that are contributing, and an improvement in one's going to improve all the others. But it doesn't guarantee, for instance, if you only work on breathing mechanics and physiology and you're improving your vagal tone that way, but you never get into you don't apply critical thinking while you've got a bigger door open or that window of tolerance is open, then you've missed a really big opportunity. Because a lot of people are committed to performing at something they don't even love at. They don't even love. They're just trying to perform better at that. And so they're trying to jump through all these hoops. And if you can improve your vagal tone and then sit back and think critically on top of that, that's how you're going to get compounding effects. And so, yeah, I just want to throw that in before we get into more of like the deeper how to do the vagal tone.
Yeah, well, because it is a holistic approach, right? And we are used to we talk about the conditioning and the prescription of, do this to fix that, like you said, and a lot of people look for that one solution where it's like, no, there's a plethora of things, and there's things in different areas of life that, when applied correctly, make the orchestra, right? You don't just play the drums. Sure, the drums are cool. You can have a drum solo, but without the clarinet, and without the percussions and the wind instruments, you don't have the orchestra, and you need it all in order to make a beautiful sound.
Yeah, people also want a single solution that comes in a pill, because they don't actually want to do what's required to get they don't want to change to get the benefit. The most common thing I've gotten from people, especially when I was doing health and fitness coaching, was I want the benefit, but I don't want to change. That was always the issue. And so a skilled coach is, all right, I hear you. Let's just change what's the one smallest thing that we could change? And sometimes it does start with a supplement that the change costs you, $50 a month and 2 minute, 1 minute to mix the scoop and drink it. Okay, fine. We'll take it. But at the end of the day, we're going to have to change a lot more than just that eventually, and step your way into that.
This next one, the paper is Slow Paced Breathing and Emotional Regulation. This was published 2021. This was in the International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health. So the study, what they did was they analyzed how 6 breaths per minute. Remember, I told you I was practicing with this a little bit. 6 breaths per minute, or I didn't know this was 0.1 hertz breathing, impacts the balance between the sympathetic, the fight or flight, and the parasympathetic, the rest and digest systems. Participants practice slow breathing while measuring HRV, EEG, brain activity, and cortisol levels during emotional stressful tasks. The
Yeah.
findings from this was slow paced breathing reduced anxiety and improved emotional regulation. Surprise, surprise. HRV coherence increased, showing greater physiological resilience, and EEG readings showed enhanced alpha wave activity, which is linked to calm and focus. We haven't spoken much about alpha wave activity here, but yeah, slow paced breathing, surprise, surprise, helps with all of this. And I heard someone once say, Mike, instead of measuring our life in years, what if we measured our life in the amount of breaths that we took?
Mm-hmm.
Mm,
Mm-hmm.
mm, mm, mm.
Yeah, I mean, you're taking us right there. The one of the best ways. It's free. It's free. The best health care on the planet is already free, y'all. Healthcare is free. 100% free. I promise you. And you don't have to demand that anyone else give it to you, because the only person that can give you healthcare is you. I promise. So if you are one of those people who think that healthcare has to be given to you by somebody else, you're never going to actually enjoy it. So uh, the the 6 breaths per minute. Let's break it down. 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out. That's going to improve your vagal tone. That's going to improve your ability to deal with stress, improve your emotional regulation. It's going to improve your memory. It's going to improve your ability to make better decisions. Do you need to be breathing 6 breaths per minute all day, every day? No, no. But I believe, I don't know if it was in this study, but in doing a little bit of research, I was finding this. I'm going to talk about all sorts of, by the way, I'm going to give you like, I think I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 different types of breathing I'm going to drop on us this show that's going for different situations. So the 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out. If you do that for 10 minutes a day, if all you do is sit there and you train your breath, you're going to get massive benefits. If you're tracking your HRV, if you're wearing a wearable, you're going to start. If you do that, try it out for a week. See what happens to your HRV. You could probably do it in the evening before bed. Just 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out. Super easy. Now, here's the thing. If I could go back in time to Mike when he was 15 years old and he was hitting the gym and lifting weights and all this, and I said, you know what? If we cut out 10 minutes out of your gym session before you worked out and you did 10 minutes of breathing exercises before you touched a weight, you're going to get more jacked, bro. You're going to put on more muscle. You're going to be more athletic. You're going to be smarter, and chicks are going to dig you more. If you sit for 10 minutes and do this breathing, I would have been like, all right, I'm in.
Say
So,
less.
and it would be true. I wish I could go back and tell myself to do that, because I wasn't paying attention to it at all. And so, by the way, I'll by the end of this, I'm going to run you through all these protocols. I'm going to tell you what I do in the morning to really set myself breath wise, because I don't just do breath on its own. I'm doing breath while doing other things. So you can stack. I mean, we're the Full Stack podcast. We're talking about
Second
stacking
stack of the
things.
podcast. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can train your breath that way with the 6 breaths in, 6 breaths out, or sorry, 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out. That's 6 breaths a minute. You could also do box breathing, which is going to increase your your tolerance to CO2, which is going to also that's really good. So the 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out is really good for stress recovery and HRV training. So I like to do something like that later in the evening. If you're preparing for a meeting, if I'm preparing for this podcast, I might do some box breathing. 4 seconds in, 4-second pause, 4 seconds out, 4-second pause, and I'm just doing 4, 4, 4, 4, 4. A lot of the Heart Math Institute shows that the 4, 4, 4, 4 box breathing is for about 5 minutes is a great way to reach that coherence. Now, to really allow you to focus. Like, I'm about to do something, I'm going to focus. And so that one's a really popular one. And then fast nasal. So if I'm about to do if I'm about to hit an exercise, if I'm about to hit it really hard, I can do what might be what you've probably seen in. There's a couple different ways to do it, but if you're in a yoga class, they might do like a pranayama breath, where it's like just in and out the nose, like, and that's actually going to activate the sympathetic nervous system. That's going it's going to cause arousal. And one thing to note when it comes to parasympathetic and sympathetic is you actually want a balance between parasympathetic and sympathetic. The reason there's so much emphasis on trying to get people into parasympathetic is that most people are in a chronic sympathetic state. That means they're chronically aroused, their nervous system is jacked up. And so just doing your best to try to get your parasympathetic online is probably the only thing you need to even consider. But in reality, you want a balance. You want to be able to like jump into the sympathetic and then jump back into parasympathetic with ease. So that fast nasal breathing is good for basically getting yourself, like, if you want to really get aroused. If I'm going to do a heavy back squat, I might do a breath like that. And then the last one, which was introduced to me by McGowan, he wrote The Oxygen Advantage, which is the Butico. Hopefully I'm saying that right. Butico method, which is really good for increasing CO2 tolerance, but it also and increasing endurance. But what it does is you ever seen those supplements for nitric oxide supplements? You take this supplement, it's going to cause vasodilation.
Yeah.
You can $50 for a bottle of vasodilators. You could do this breath and you're going to see a greater improvement in nitric oxide and vasodilation than you would from that supplement. The supplement's totally unnecessary. All you have to do is quick education.
Save the $50. Let's go.
Save the $50. You don't need it. And so with the Butico breathing is all about building up your CO2 tolerance. And there's a guy who's really big on this. His name is Brian McKenzie. He's on Instagram putting out amazing content about breath that we'll have on the show at some point. He's a good friend of mine. But we can do a quick test, right? So if we want to know how good your breathing is, if we want to get an idea of where your health is at, I don't need to put you on a treadmill. I don't need to put you through a CrossFit workout. In fact, a lot of people who are good at those things will suffer during this little test. And so you just sit upright and you sit for 2 minutes. And I'm going to tell you how to use the Butico method to train and to improve your score. But first, we're going to talk about the test. So I'll explain the test. I'm sure a lot of people are going to pause this and then do the test. If you're driving, don't do this test while driving. But you're going to sit upright for 2 minutes and relax. And you're just going to, you want to get your breath kind of like get down to a sigh. And then you just want to breathe low and slow, not deep, but just give yourself a little bit of you just want to get really calm. You're not taking big breaths. You're just getting really calm. And then you're going to do a normal exhale. And then you're going to pinch your nose and hold your breath. And you're going to time how long you can hold your breath on the exhale. And so when you have that first urge to breathe, like, I'm talking about you feel that, that's when you're done. We're not trying to push through it. This is just a test. So when you get that reflex and you take the time, it's going to tell you what your CO2 tolerance is. And the CO2 tolerance is a huge indicator of longevity, vagal tone, CO2 tolerance. And if you fail the test, if you don't, it's a sign of chronic hyperventilation. So anything under 15 seconds is you need help. And there are people who are really awesome athletes that fail this. They get 5-10 seconds in and they can't, that reflex kicks in. So it's not, but those are probably the athletes that are gonna, they'll die young. They may perform well today, but they won't last. The average is 15 to 25 seconds. Good vagal tone is going to be 25 to 40 seconds. If you can do 25 to 40 seconds, you have pretty good vagal tone. Anything over 40 seconds is elite.
I'm going for 40 seconds, baby.
This is something that and so I love doing this. I love to train with the Butico method for my warm up, because when I do this, by the way, you're likely, if you have sinus congestion, it'll clear out, because what will happen is you're experiencing a constriction in your nasal cavity. This is going to dump nitric oxide into your nasal cavity, and it's going to tell your nasal cavity to get it all out. And it's going to just open up all your blood vessels in your body, so it's ready to train. So just real quick, how I like to train the Butico method is basically walk for like 2 minutes. So I do this walk for 2 minutes, and then not a big exhale out. You're not like emptying your lungs. It's not like not getting it all out like they tell you to do in yoga class. Just get to the bottom of your breath, and then while you're walking, hold it until you hit that reflex, and then bring it back, and then take 10 breaths. And you get 10 breaths, and then you do it again. And you do that for 3 to 5 rounds. And so I'm walking for 2 minutes. I do this. Probably 5 minutes of walking is all this is. And you have flooded your system with nitric oxide naturally. You're training your CO2 tolerance, and your aerobic capacity, your endurance during that training session is going to be elevated. So you're going to perform at a higher level. So this is a great way to, and what's going to happen is you're increasing your vagal tone. So then everything else you're doing with breath is going to be really a lot easier.
So quick question on that. Selfishly, I'm T minus 4 or 5 days away, 4 days away from my High Rocks race. Is this something that would be beneficial to do the day of my race? Is it too late to get the benefits from, maybe for my second or third race? For any endurance athlete who has one, start doing it today.
Start doing it today.
My man just gave you the cheat code.
Start doing it today. Do it during your warm up. Again, you're not pushing it. What you're doing is you're causing a little bit of oxygen hunger. Mm-hmm. And then that oxygen hunger is gonna trigger some things in your body that's gonna basically increase the amount of red blood cells. Yeah, of course, over time, this is best done over time, but there's acute benefit and over time as well. And then I think the one that a lot of people will be interested in right now is this is one that Huberman made popular, which is this is like, I'm feeling stress right now and I want to decompress. You ever notice like you're having a stressful day and you're sighing a lot? You're like, ah.
Yeah.
Or you may notice with your wife, she's sighing a lot. And you're like, oh.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah. So sighing is your body's way of, like, it's a stress relief. So if anyone's ever sighing a lot, like, what's going on for you? I want to check in. Or if I catch myself sighing, I check in on myself. And so you can also intentionally sigh. And a lot of times if you're working with a good breathwork practitioner, at some point they'll have you sigh during the breath work. And so it's just a double inhale through the nose. So, and then that's it. You can do that 2 or 3 times, and your nervous system is going to just chill out. So if you're experiencing some anxiety, whatever, it's a quick little hack. And then that's going to lower your heart rate immediately. This is not something I would do before bed. I mean, what I talked about beforehand, before bed, is going to be more helpful. But I like this in the in the middle of the day if I notice myself getting amped up. Take it to the next level. Hum instead of sigh. And so the sigh, the hum creates more vibration in the system, which is good feedback. It also slows the out breath. So one little thing to keep in mind. So I threw a bunch of times and numbers and things at people. So majority of how I do breath work now is I'm not counting a lot. I'm going by feel a lot. And so, by the way, all the things I just said is based on research, which means it's averaged out over a population of people. There's always outliers. Maybe, the 4-4-4-4 box breathing. Maybe you're a 5-5-5-5 person or a 3-3-3-3 person. Like you gotta tune your own system and you get in tune with your own system by doing what the protocols that are suggested and then noticing how you feel. The longer the exhale, the more calming to the system. The longer the inhale, the more the system wants to ramp up. So if I were doing breath work and I go 6 seconds in, 3 seconds out, then that's going to charge my system up. I'm going to start going into sympathetic. I'm going to start going up in my system. I want to down regulate. I would do 4 seconds in, 6 seconds out. So with that knowledge, most people can start figuring out how to regulate their system just with that. I'm feeling a little ramped up. I'm feeling a little anxiety. Do a longer exhale than an inhale. And one great way to do that is to hum. You're not going to hum shorter than you inhale. Singing. People watch these singers. They quickly get an inhale. They spend very little time inhaling, and then they spend all this time exhaling. And so that's like a kind of like a first principles approach to breath. If you just know that by itself, you've got a really big hack. And then you can look at all these different techniques, and because that's one of the principles, right? So you can look at all these different breathwork techniques and go, oh, I see what's going on here. I did some breathwork with this great practitioner a few weeks ago, and we did one where we did fast inhales, slow exhales, and then we flipped it and we went the other direction, and then we did some breath holds. It's like, oh, so I'm like noticing how all these things make me feel. So I recommend anyone else they do that. And I was going to mention, the one thing I did want to mention is the way I do it in the morning is I do a lot of, I start my morning rolling out my body, and then I stretch. So I stretch every morning, and I'm doing a lot of this breath work. I'm doing a lot of breathing. And I'm holding out breaths. I'm holding in breaths. I'm doing all these things, and I'm noticing how my body responds and how my fascia responds. And so basically I'm rolling out and stretching and hydrating my body. I'm taking sips of water, getting the fluids back in because the fascia needs water. And then I'm breathing, I'm down regulating the nervous system. And then that allows the fascia to relax and get into the stretch deeper. And so I'm doing breath work. I'm stretching. I'm hydrating. I'm in my garage doing that for an hour, at least an hour at a minimum. And
nice.
So by the time I walk into my day, I'm pretty chill.
That's awesome. You probably wake up and your wife's like, get in the garage.
She's in the garage with me. Yeah,
nice.
She did not start with me, but I kept inviting her, and now she's doing her own. We do very similar routines. It's not like we're doing the same thing at the same time, but we're in the garage working around each other, doing that as a family.
Such is life. Such is life. Once they start seeing the results, they're like, you know what? Let me jump in on this thing. Seems to work out.
Well, the other thing too is like one of the things that so when I met my wife, she did yoga and CrossFit, and she was doing like working out hard, and then she noticed I didn't really work out as hard as she was, and and I was like, yeah, I don't have to work out that hard because I'm I'm moving all the time. I'm doing breath work. I'm doing all this stuff that keeps the system tuned. And
Hmm.
I don't think she really listened to that in the beginning, but over time, she's like, this guy stays pretty shredded. I'm 44. It's like he's got a six pack. He doesn't work out like crazy. And anytime something needs to be done, like he's physically capable. It's like, yeah, it's just moving frequently and having great control over my breath. And of course, having a deep background in fitness, that's how it's easy to maintain because I have good control over my breath.
Yeah. Some would say it's hard to maintain. That's because they're not consistent. But as you have the consistency and you have your routine dialed in, someone else's might look a little different. Maybe they stretch later in the day. Maybe they stretch midday. However, it might be, whatever works for you keeps the body tuned. And really, like you mentioned before, if the smallest adjustment is taking this one supplement or drinking water, it's the protocol you're going to do is the most beneficial for you. We'll start there. It's the one that you're actually going to do. um before we move on, is there anything else that you wanted to say about the breath? I did want to ask about the concept. I was listening to it was a YouTube facilitator for breath work, and it was like, breathe deep into your legs and then like breathe in like into like different parts of the body. It was almost like body scan with breath work at the same time. Have you ever like heard that incorporated before?
Yeah. A lot of the work I've done with fascia is I'm 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 in a stretch or I'm applying like a lacrosse ball or a soft, a ball that's softer than that into an area and then I'm breathing into that area.
Nice.
So I'm
Nice.
meeting my body with my breath and breathing into those areas. Is is air actually is your lungs actually expanding into that area? No. But it's pushing up into that space. And we want our lungs to be able to expand in all directions really well and with confidence.
I love that. I want to jump into the last study while we still have some time, and I think this helps bring a lot of things together. Obviously, it's another one on athletes or athletic performance, but we've already jumped onto that nuance. This one's on the cognitive and effective neuroscience of superior athletic performance. This was published in 2020, Wiley Online Library, Cognitive and Effective Neuroscience of Superior Athletic Performance. And what the researchers did was they examined the neural signatures of flow and high performance states using EEG and fMRI in elite athletes performing both cognitive and motor skills. They measured changes in the prefrontal cortex, the decision making area of the brain, and the anterior cingulate cortex, which is the focus and the error detection area of the brain. Now, during competition and levels of stress is when they did this study. What they found was elite performers show reduced prefrontal overactivity, so less internal chatter and more embodied flow, something that you alluded to earlier in the episode. They exhibit coordinated neural efficiency. Their brains work smarter, not harder, something else you alluded to in the show with flow. And emotional stability was linked with higher HRV and vagal regulation during performance. So, really, the entire show, starting from the vagus nerve to some of the ways to tune the vagus nerve, breathwork strategies, and now coming full circle to really the effectiveness as when you find yourself in these flow states, how you work smarter, not harder.
Yeah, I think it's worth breaking down what flow states are. And so there's
Mhm.
are you familiar with the book Flow by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi?
I'm familiar with it. I have not read it though.
Okay, so it's so funny because in the wisdom circles, people reference it all the time, and there's a book I had to read, and I took sports psychology in college, And that was one of my favorite. I didn't think I was going to like sports psychology. And then I read that book and I go, oh my gosh, this is incredible. And so flow states are achieved when the demand isn't too far outside of your current ability, and you're also not bored. So on one side, the demand is not enough, and on one side, the demand may be too much. And flow happens when you're right there, when you're just skilled enough, but it requires your full attention in order to not get jacked up. That's the other part of flow is there has to be a cost to making a mistake. So pain, and this is why a lot of times when people are studying flow, they're studying extreme athletes. Yeah, the cost of a mistake could be their life or a broken bone or whatever. And so flow states, extreme athletes or someone you can look at, athletes or not athlete, martial arts is another way. We've mentioned that before. Musicians, you don't want to look, you mess up, you're jamming and you mess up in front of people. There's a cost to making a mistake. In video games, the cost of making a mistake is I got to respawn. I die, I lose a life or something, right? And so, like the idea of flow states is really interesting because people are improving at their craft at what they do when they're in a flow state. And why is that? Why are they improving so quickly in a flow state? If you're not in a flow state, like say you're learning a new skill and you're not in the flow state, like do you feel like you're learning very quickly?
You're forcing it. It's inertia. You're like friction.
We've all witnessed like the frustrated student and how they're just not learning. And then you have the student that's in that flow state, whatever it is they're learning, and they're just picking up on it so fast. And so flow states we can think about it as you have a view of reality. And this is how it's linked to wisdom, is what I'm getting at, is you have a view of reality and you're operating inside of this box. And in order to perform at a higher level, you actually have to expand the box. You have to get outside of the box. Mm-hmm. And in order to break the box, you have to break the frame. You have to break how you are perceiving reality. And when you get into flow states, it actually slows down that overthinking, right? You're talking about the prefrontal cortex. It actually starts getting into a frequency that's not overactive, but it actually slows it down, and then it gets more into what's happening physically. And what you're able to do is break the reality that you're in and create a new one in that moment. And so that creates an insight. So you gain an insight of, I thought things were this way, but now I realize I can do this. Have you ever done that? I mean, I remember like just throwing a football around at times and like throwing my hand out and catching it. No one ever taught me how to do that. And like, I didn't even see it. I just felt that it was there. And then I extended my hand out and it was in my hand. And everyone's like, oh my God. I'm like, I didn't learn how to do that. And like in that moment, I had to break the frame of reality and do something new that had never been done before by me.
You mentioned martial arts. I was sparring in Muay Thai, and they threw one of the spinning punches, and then immediately followed it up with another spin, but this time it was a kick, and I just ducked it, and then came back with the counter. And we've rehearsed the slip, the parry, the dodge. We never rehearsed a duck before. My instructor never taught me that. No one ever taught me to duck the kick that you know is coming. But to your point, it was a bodily reaction, and it was a moment in the sparring mid round. We both stopped. We're like, "Oh, that was dope," but that was the flow state.
And so you're in a flow state. You're breaking reality, your perception of reality in that moment, and you're creating a new one. And when that happens, we call that an insight.
Mm.
And so then we can stack insights. And so you get into a flow state for, a lot of times people only experience flow state for a short period of time, but you can get into an hour of flow state. You can get an hour-long flow state session. I've done it in yoga. I've done it in rock climbing. I've done it in martial arts. I've done it in podcasting where there's all of a sudden I lose track of time. Like time stands still. I'm engaged in this conversation. It's pushing my own knowledge, but also like I'm playing with this person. There's so many different area driving. I this summer we did go-kart racing and we were in Spain and I saw this go-kart spot and we pulled over. I was in flow state for 10 minutes. I was sliding around the track. I was, pushing my own limits. And, my wife thought I was being unsafe, but I was right on the edge. And so these flow states are really important for wisdom because you can start stacking those insights and then your ability to see the world differently because you've just broken reality and you've tested it. You've tested your abilities, you've tested your knowledge, you've tested something against reality that has a real stake. I could get injured or I could look bad or whatever it is. I'm testing this in real time. And so these the someone who one of the things I like to do is how often can I put myself in flow states because that's going to be indicative of how well I can accumulate wisdom. How wise can I be? If I never get into flow states, accumulating wisdom is going to be slow and treacherous and hard. And so, um, I've told everyone we'd get into the wisdom conversation here, but that's what we're looking to do. We're talking about flow and on top of that, flow states are just much more enjoyable than ple- experiencing pleasure. It's like the person who's looking forward to that piece of cake at the end of the day, someone who's obsessed with pleasure is always doing pleasure seeking activities. We have a lot of people who are obese that are eating too many sweets and that's all they're looking forward to. Well, they're probably not experiencing flow states very often. So if you're not experiencing insights and developing wisdom, the only thing you know how to do to distract yourself from that is to seek pleasure. And I'm not I love my pleasure, but I'm not hedonistic. And so, when I see people who are hedonistic, I'm like, okay, maybe they're not hitting their flow states very often.
That reminds me of are you familiar with Eric Hinman?
I don't think so.
Yeah. He's a beast of an athlete. I think he won the Kona Ironman a while back. I've had him on my podcast and he's got a newsletter and he mentioned why he switched his lifestyle. And the whole thing was talking about pretty much going from indulgent lifestyle with drinking and seeking pleasure, like we're talking about, to now he goes on bike rides. He opens up his house to all these guys to come over, like a very community based lifestyle where they go in the sauna, cold plunge. He had what was called Muscle Mountain. I think he just moved to Austin and built like a huge house, calls it Muscle Mansion now. But long story short, he said, I went from having all these empty pleasures, and he's like, I enjoy fitness because it puts me in flow state. And he's in essence chasing flow instead of chasing pleasure.
I
Right
mean,
there.
pleasure gives you, it's just for a moment, and then once it's gone, I mean, you eat that piece of cake, and then 5 minutes after you eat that piece of cake, it doesn't feel good. You get lethargic, you're tired, you may feel guilty. You get into a
Mhm.
flow state, you're probably going to feel good for the rest of the day.
Back to that run. The run I had with my daughter. I mean, the rest of my day, we ran, we stopped, we got a smoothie. She drank some of it. I ran home, and then I realized I only planned to run like a couple miles. I ended up running 4, and it was just, oh wow, that was such a great day. And the rest of my day, Mike, was it's perfect. when my wife got home, I was like, let me tell you about my run. I cracked this joke. I joked with that person. And now it's the mentality. I never thought I would say this, but yesterday I was looking forward to my run. Like
Yeah.
I am a runner now. Like, like I am a runner now. And who knew, right? So we can change our identity. We can change the things that we chase, going from pleasure to running, right? When I decided to be a hybrid athlete, I would drink. I was indulgent with it. It was, oh, I go to dinner, let me get a beer with it. Oh, we're watching football, let me get a beer with it. Now I finish a run, it's either an NA drink or just give me some good water with like give me some coconut water with some lemon and electrolytes. Your boy's good, right? It's a completely different approach to life, and I love that. And with the wisdom piece, the joy to it, when you put it in that framework of bringing joy to what you do, um, I look at the challenges as fun now. Whether it's a puzzle, some look at the games as fun, video games, things. Whether it's your business, your business is just an elaborate puzzle that you're figuring out. And guess what? When you hit that next revenue stage, okay, you got to level 2, and then level 3 is Bowser, right? Um, Turning it into a game, this beautiful game we called life, right? Is where we acquire the knowledge necessary to get to that next level.
Just playing over here. Some sometimes over the weekend, someone was they were trying to talk me into going to this party, and everyone's going to the party but me. And it sounds like it's probably gonna be the best party in Austin of the year. That my friend's producing it. I I know it's gonna be dope, but you know what? I want my weekend for something else, and I want to show up and play my games during the week with my business and have a great time doing it. And I value that more. And sometimes people on the outside are, they think like, oh, you're kind of like you're not doing the fun stuff and you're working hard. I'm like, I don't finish my day of work thinking, oh, I worked hard. It's like, no, man, I just played all day. I just played all day. I might be tired from playing all day, but there's, uh, and then there's the additional benefit of, when the business is doing what I want it to be doing, then it affords more freedom to do other things as well. Like there's additional benefits on that. Whereas going to a party, you're going to enjoy that for a night and then take a couple days to recover. And then you're going to try to like do the things that you should have been doing all weekend. And now it feels like an obligation, and obligation is not play.
Yeah, no. Mm-mm. And then you get that shame loop for what you did, and then you got to bounce back for the time wasted, and the list goes on and on. But it's been fun playing for this last hour and 10 minutes. I feel like this is one of the most dense. Whoa, almost fell. That's how that's how dense this was. Almost hit me in the face with all the information. But I gotta say, Mike, this is probably one of the most dense episodes of the Full Stack podcast that we've done. Something tells me the audience, the listeners, you guys are gonna have to put this on repeat a couple times to really get the full value from it, because it's been fantastic, man.
Awesome. Yeah, I've enjoyed it.
Yeah. If I could recap some of the things, absolutely. We got more full stack reports on the docket, but for today, contemplation requires time, right? We started with the regurgitation of what we see on social media, and even when you see those studies that come out, they read the title and they tell you what it means, but you need to contemplate it, and that takes time to maybe boil it over a little bit, consider it, and then share your insights. The vagus nerve, connecting the brain, the heart, and the gut. And it's a two-way highway, it's a two-way communication system. The window of tolerance, how much can you handle in this moment? How regulated is your nervous system? How tuned is your vagus nerve? And how does that impact your window of tolerance? Heart math, if you're looking to understand how well your heart and your mind are synced, look up your heart math. Download the app, focus on that, and also shift your internal narrative if you're looking for a higher value in life. People are lacking the nuance. Again, back to the contemplation taking time. It's free. The whole middle section of this podcast If you want your best your best healthcare podcast, just go to the middle section of this breath work. Whether it's the 6 breaths per minute, 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out, do it for 10 minutes. It's a great stress recovery and HRV training tool. Box breathing, increasing your tolerance to CO2. Fast nasal breathing, causing arousal and activating the sympathetic nervous system. The Batico, was it the Batico breathing?
Yes.
Batico breathing, Brian McKenzie. Look him up on social if you're looking for some good insight on that. If you want to test yourself, sit upright for 2 minutes and relax. Breathe low and slow, then give a normal exhale, hold your breath. And once you have that trigger, that response to breathe again, it's done. Time how long that is, 15 seconds or less, better call somebody. If you're up to 40 seconds, my man, you're elite. And of course, in order to train that, walk for 2 minutes, exhale, hold your breath while walking. And then when you feel that need, inhale again, take 10 breaths, repeat. Um, Physiological sigh. Sighing is the body's stress release. If you hear someone sighing, they're probably stressed. If you want to enhance this, add the hum to extend the amount of time in which you exhale. And then flow state. Demand isn't too high, isn't too low. Flow state is the Goldilocks challenge that you're looking for. Puts you into that flow state where you're working smarter, not harder. You're acquiring knowledge and skill sets faster. And of course, in flow, you're breaking reality. And those breaks in the reality is what we call insight. Pleasure is fleeting, flow is everlasting. Go ahead and lean into it. Bring fun to what you're doing. Tune your vagus nerve. Breathe slow and live well. This is the Full Stack Podcast. Thanks for being with us. We'll catch you guys next time. That's Mike. I'm Ted. Go live a full stack life.